Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Geezerology. We're going to do a video in our series celebrating 40 today. Bill is here to talk about not an LP, but an EP. This is going to be the debut recording of R.E.M. from August of 1982, August 24th to be exact, 1982. Chronic Town, a 5-song EP that they released about 6 months before their debut album came out. But this was the first time that the public ever heard R.E.M. Besides, I think there was a single before this. But Bill can tell you all about it. Go for it, Bill.
Thanks, Scott. I am one of those people who actually bought the single Radio Free Europe, and I'm going to tell you a tiny little vignette, a little personal vignette about how that happened. I was in 1981. I was in the Air Force, and I was stationed in what was West Germany at the time. But I had continued my enthusiasms for all kinds of music, and I had a subscription to New York Rocker, which is a monthly newspaper that came out of New York City, and they covered kind of the punk new wave scene. They had done a report on the burgeoning scene going on in Athens, Georgia. And this cover story was about the band Love Tractor. And that was interesting to me. I mean, I had not heard of these guys, but inside there were a couple of little sidebars. Among them was this little snippet about this band called R.E.M. That didn't have any music out, but you know, in the paragraph that was describing what their sound was like, it intrigued me, and so I filed that away for future reference. And a few months later, I was again reading New York Rocker, and I came upon a little ad from this outfit called Hibtone Records. And they had R.E.M.'s debut single available for order. And so I sent my, I think it was $3.50 plus shipping to the address. And a few weeks later, I received that single, Radio Free Europe. And I slapped that thing on the stereo. And I don't want to say it was a life-changing experience, because that's kind of crazy. But it was really staggering to me. I mean, I first of all, for two reasons. I didn't understand a single word except for the chorus. And secondly, I could not believe how great this sounded. It sounded like the Byrds jacked up on all kinds of crazy amphetamines or some sorts of magical life-affirming drugs. I don't know what they were, but and there was very little information about the band. I think it had the names. The single was in this little slip sheet that was blurred, and you know, you could barely read any of the information on it anyway. So the whole thing was quite mysterious to me. And the only reason I knew there was a band that had people in it, you know, actual human beings, is because I had read that article earlier. So anyway, I was now very attuned to this notion that there's some outfit out there in Georgia that bears paying attention to. And as you mentioned, about a year later, this EP came out, a 5-song EP called Chronic Town. And they had gotten, by this point, a little bit more broadened in their repertoire and their approach. But the good news is I still could not understand a single, or hardly a single word, that the singer, Michael Stipe, was recounting. And that just made me even more excited about it, because it sounded important. It sounded very worth kind of getting to the bottom of. And though I oftentimes, even now, if you try to check, go online and you check Genius or one of these other lyric outfits, you still don't understand what the heck he's talking about, even if you did understand the lyrics. So sometimes, and in my preparation for talking about this, I went back and I looked through the lyrics, and then I played the music, and I forgot the lyrics even as the music was playing, because I still couldn't understand what they had said. So it was really kind of powerful for me to kind of be exploring music that was so catchy and yet so indecipherable. There was a saying a couple of years previously, I think the Clash's record company had put a sticker on London Calling that said the only band that matters, which is kind of a bold statement, although certainly as a big Clash fan, I won't fight that. But at the same time, or subsequently, when R.E.M. started to get a level of awareness, some smart critic said that they were the only band that mutters, and I thought that was probably a pretty good take on how they came across to me and a lot of other fans. So let me just talk a little bit about this EP. It's 21 minutes, so guess what? I mean, you could have a cup of coffee and get through it, and you don't even have to, your coffee is still going to be warm when you're done. If you want to give it a listen, it's worth it, and it won't take up much time. I would say out of the 5 songs, almost all of them are really, really good. The last one, which is Stumble, the only thing about that is that it's about 5 minutes and it's too long. So I would have cut that, but just cut it down. Otherwise, you're talking about some stuff that really has set the template for the R.E.M. that a lot of people are familiar with, especially in their first years with IRS records. So if you were a fan of Murmur, their first album, and Reckoning, their second, and you haven't heard this one, it fits right in, and you can see how that whole sound is going to evolve because a lot of the pieces are in place. I talk about Michael Stipe and his lyrics, which are very hard to understand, and yet they sound important. Peter Buck is, he's a guitar slinger, and he's slinging a Rickenbacker, and that's a good thing to sling, let me tell you, because it's got that whole jangly, Birdsian sound, and he's playing these arpeggios through this. He's not a power chord guy. He's a arpeggio master. They've got Mike Mills, who is a great bass player, but more importantly, he's got a great voice. He does a lot of powerful backing vocals that adds a lot of power and sweetness to these songs. And I think the hidden secret weapon to the band is Bill Berry, who's their drummer, also known as the Unibrow, for reasons that you will see if you watch a video. But Bill he's got a real whiplash snare style, and he is really good at driving the beat, and he kind of keeps the whole thing together. And it's really clear. I mean, to go way ahead to the end of the band, they had a very successful career, but when Bill retired, he essentially said, I'm going to go back to the farm. And they kind of carried on for a number of years. It was never the same. So he is an essential part of the band, and you can start to see that right at the very beginning. So the songs themselves, they're kind of swirly, a little bit of psychedelia, a little bit of, power popish hook driven stuff. Part of the reason behind this is Mitch Easter is the producer, and Mitch is a guy who they had chosen because he had a little rock combo called Let's Active that was popular in college towns down in the South. In particular, he was in North Carolina. R.E.M. was in Athens, Georgia, where the University of Georgia is. And out of Athens at the same time comes a number of bands. The B-52s, another quite well-known one, but also there's a whole second tier of very good bands that never had the career that R.E.M. had, but they come from the similar, kind of take on the world at the time in the early 80s. They are taking a lot of the past and recreating it for their own purposes and taking it in a new way. And I think, what happens in the 80s further on in a couple of different ways. R.E.M. is a key player, obviously, because they are an inspiration for other bands. They are played on what becomes kind of called college radio music, and certainly they are well regarded in that kind of alternative scene. Because of their video work, they actually break through to the MTV audience as well. And subsequently, their videos, I would say, especially in the mid to late '80s, when they have moved out of IRS records into Warner Brothers, they get all the a lot of push behind what they're doing, and their visibility increases all along. And so the sound changes over the years. But if you want to hear REM at its beginnings, its origin, I would recommend Chronic Town. It's really a good listen, and there are a couple of songs. If you can ever tell me what the lyrics are, you're going to be singing them in the shower. Otherwise, you're going to be muttering them like everybody else.
Yeah, I remember I first got into R.E.M. Got onto them, not into, got onto them back at the dawn of CD era. I remember in 1985, which is when I first got my CD player, and I bought a bunch of CDs, and one of them I bought was Fables of the Reconstruction, which was their third album, and I bought it because I had a coworker who was talking about REM all the time. I thought, well, I need to listen to REM, and so that gave me an excuse to buy a new CD, right, for this new CD player. And what you were saying, and I don't remember if I've ever listened to Murmur or Reckoning, but I do know Chronic Town because I picked up Chronic Town later as it was packaged with Dead Letter Office, which was
right,
sort of an outtake compilation a couple of years after Fables of the Reconstruction. And I really liked it, but I had the same reaction as you did. I knew Fables of the Reconstruction very well. I really liked it a lot, for the same reason you did. My thing is that it was Peter Buck's Bergian jangly guitar was what got me, and Michael Stipe's vocals, which were, I mean, they were really kind of part of the mix, but they stood there, but you could hear them, and you hear the vocals. It was pretty tuneful. It was very catchy, those vocals, but you couldn't understand a word he was saying. Same way on Fables of the Reconstruction, and same way. And so when I listened to Chronic Town a couple years after I heard Fables of the Reconstruction, it's like, oh yeah, yep, that's the same band, because by that time they had started moving out of the college radio crowd and started hitting the mainstream MTV, like you were talking about. And it was right after that where they became this big, huge monster of a band, but at this time they were still fairly a cult and not a mainstream success. But I remember I used to love listening to that stuff.
One of the great things about that album that you mentioned, Fables of the Reconstruction, is when you look at the album, if you hold it one way on the spine, it says Fables of the Reconstruction, and then underneath it, the other way, it says Reconstruction of the Fables, which I always thought was like, hey, that's really clever.
I remember on the CD, when you put your CD in the case, where you see the spine on the spine of that CD, I remember it said Reconstruction of the Fables. And I didn't know for a long time. I didn't know if that was intentional, if that was just a misprint or whatever. I later learned they were just messing with us.
Yeah, it's all good.
Just making it more mysterious, because you're right. I mean, it's the same reaction to me. I mean, it was just there was just this band was just, when I first heard them, it was just clouded in mystery. It's like, what is going on here? But it was really good stuff. Yeah, but yeah, like I say, Chronic Town then was later reissued on Dead Letter Office, and that's where I got onto it, and I had the same reaction to it as Bill did. It was just this band just kind of had the slow evolution, and then all of a sudden MTV came calling, and they just exploded. And started changing their music up quite a bit later, I remember. And they were stuck around. I was just looking at their discography. Their last album was 2011, and that was a number 5 album, Collapse Into Now. I don't know how many albums were there, 15 of them. So they stuck around for a long time. But
yeah, they had. I mean, they were strong performers all the way through the end. I would say the
Yeah.
last maybe three albums were not up to their standards, but there you could kind of divide there's the three eras. There's the early IRS, first stuff IRS. Then there's their kind of imperial period where from Fables through Green and Automatic for the People, and a lot of the songs that people actually know. I mean, they still play them on the radio. And then they had their post Bill Berry era when the drummer retired. They kept it up, and those are pretty spotty. I mean, there's some strong performances, but overall it doesn't really work. I mean, it's interesting that I listened to by accident. It kind of, because I don't really listen to them that much anymore. I mean, it's kind of like part of my history, so I know them, and if I think about them, I can kind of remember the sounds. But I heard "What's the Frequency, Kenneth" off of Monster, and that's one where you can almost understand what he's saying. And Stipe is talking about what purportedly these two guys corralled Dan Rather on a street in New York, and they held him up against the wall and said, they asked him, "What's the frequency, Kenneth?" And so that's the kind of the lead into the chorus. But the whole song is full of things like you wore our expectations like an armored suit. It's really odd. But you can sort of almost hear the lyrics. So that's, as far as I'm concerned, their evolution became one where the meaning became slowly clearer, and yet the power became slightly less.
Right. I thought my favorite R.E.M. I listened to pretty much all those albums during the middle period. I bought all those albums. My absolute favorite R.E.M. was Monster, just to kind of throw that in. A lot of people rain on that parade, but man, I love that one.
And it's good. It's good.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of a glam rock take on the R.E.M. sound,
It's just really fuzzy and nasty and distorted, and I love it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, anyway, yep, that's our look at Chronic Town. Everybody, thanks for listening. Join us again in the next few weeks. We'll have some more interesting stuff coming up to toss your way. Some roundtables with our Missouri buddies, Bob and Dan, joining us, and we'll do a few more reviews on the next few Fridays. Hit that subscribe button. Keep up with what's going on at Geezerology, and we'll talk to you later. So long, everybody.